Today I'm talking to Andy Taylor of Sotheby's International Realty Canada in Toronto. Andy consistently closes multi-million-dollar transactions in his market. Today he talks to us about how he does it and how connecting with clients has been the real key of his success. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast is to share knowledge for realtors and raise awareness for Give Back Homes, where real estate professionals work together for social good. Jet Centers Aviation, Bentley Atlanta, Legends Global, thank you for your sponsorship. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top agents tell how they do it. And today we have Andy Taylor, who is a top real estate agent at Sotheby's International Realty Canada in Toronto, one of the first 5 agents at Sotheby's International Realty Canada, and a top agent not only in Toronto, but in Sotheby's International Realty, and just incredibly amazing. What I really like about Andy, we met recently, and this guy is a real strategist. That said, Andy, introduce yourself and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Jere. I really appreciate the opportunity to partake. I've watched all your podcasts, and I know I've been hounding, but thanks for the opportunity to get on here.
Love it. Love it. We're so excited to have you. So that said, to get us started, give us a quick look at you and your story and how you became a real estate agent.
Oh, well, I think like a lot of real estate agents, I tried everything out there under the sun. My family, I've been around real estate since I had a ball in my mouth. My family were all condo developers. Decided I'd try to get away from that and do my own thing, and did a little bit of time in the ad agency world and learned how to find great features and benefits in products. And then after that, I went to the financial services, did sales there. But at the end of the day, real estate's in the blood. And I came back to real estate in 2004. But with all these different experiences, it really helped me understand how to take my passion for real estate and market those properties effectively with clients and how to work with them.
Well, listening to your history, you started in real estate with your family. You learned about marketing. You learned about finance, which are the other 2 relevant components of real estate. So you really didn't know it, but you were just getting your education to get right back into real. So what was the kind of moment that brought you back to real estate? Was there like, okay, there's nothing else to do like so many of us, or was it?
I think it's you know I remember going with my grandfather, and we would drive around Toronto looking for land for my family to develop, and we'd be there at 5:30 in the morning, driving around. And it's just the love. It's walking the land. I think, to be honest with you, I was spending a lot of time with my grandfather, which, an important part of my life. So that probably was that anchor, and then coming back. Raising a family and having something that you're strong at, you have a good knowledge of, and a passion. And that's it.
With the value, it's easy for you to bring value. I'm big on, you've listened to mine, I'm big on like, it's not about chasing people down until they can't say no. It's about the value you offer and they come to you. And clearly having that kind of background brings huge value. So go ahead.
Well, I think you're right on there. I found, I know you always say the aha moment. And for me, it was realizing that to be successful in real estate is not being a salesperson, but an advisor, And when you take real estate and not look at it as this transaction, but look at it as a long-term process for, 1, 3, 5 years, 10 years that you're going to work with that client the rest of their life. And if you look at that relationship as a long-term advisory role, you know what? The deals just start coming one after the other.
Well, you become a protector in the way you do transactions as opposed to a deal maker.
And that's exactly it. It's not about that transaction. It's finding what the best, what is the best interest. I think the easiest way to find the second deal is to say no on this deal. And then you just look, that client will just keep looking for opportunities to feed your business.
Exactly.
Because you're looking for the best interest of them.
That's great. So kind of to make you elaborate a little bit more on what you just told us, what do you think? I mean, real estate is incredibly competitive. Well, first, tell us a little bit about your market in Toronto. You guys have got a pretty good price point there. I think you've got, what are your market feeders? Where does your business come from?
It's a great market. So Toronto's one where, I was just speaking in the luxury conclave for Ashwin and Amit in India. And
I feel like all my friends were there. I'm not trying to, I should have been there.
I know, you got to come next time.
What was I thinking?
It was amazing. And, we were all up there talking about our markets, New York and Seattle, and then came to Toronto, and it was about global top investment destinations globally. And I essentially went up and said, Toronto is a very boring market. And that's what it is. We're boring. But boring's good because we don't see big swings, whether it's prices, we don't see big swings up and big swings down. Politically, we're whether you're conservative or liberal, we're pretty, in the middle, either way. And our financial system was one that wasn't affected during the financial crisis in the late, in 2008. In fact, in Toronto, our market kind of was a little bit of awe and shock, didn't know where to move, so it just stayed stagnant, dropped a little bit for about 6 months in 2008, but then was back up to normal levels prior to that within 6 months. So it's a market that is, we don't see large shifts in it quickly, but I think that's what people like about it. Gradually we've had since the early 1990s, our market has continually grown for the past 25 years, but little bits at a time.
Where do you find most people that move to Toronto or invest in Toronto? Where do you find they usually come from?
So we have a very strong domestic market that, is buying in Toronto. But what we're seeing is, when we started the Sotheby's office 11 years ago, actually this month, I was excited. I was telling all my friends, listen, I've got Sotheby's. I can, help clients, looking from New York or Atlanta or London or wherever it might be around the world. And my friends would go, that's great, Andy, but Toronto's not in New York or London or Paris. We're not that international. Well, it's interesting because now what we're seeing is that Toronto is become that international city.
Well, when I listen to you talk about, the stability of the market, it's like, gosh, that's such an obvious market for foreign investors to go into and to look, because their money's going to be a lot safer and the decisions are a lot easier to make there.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things is we are, for investors, we're one of the largest, I think the largest city in North America for condo development. So right now, we have about 175 cranes in the air. That's down from about 350 about 5 years ago.
Wow.
But we continually see about 35,000 new condominium units be put into the market each year. But you have to take into consideration we're getting 100,000 new immigrants into the Toronto market. So,
and where are those immigrants coming from? Is there a heavy percentage of them?
They're coming from all over, to be perfectly honest with you. Europe, the Chinese market is very strong in Toronto. We're seeing, and that's why we're in India, the Indian market has looked at Toronto again as that place that's stable, not just resident, like real estate wise, but politically and financial institutions.
Interesting.
So, they're looking for long-term capital appreciation. The other nice thing for investors is that our vacancy rate in condominiums is less than 1%. So
you've got that many cranes and putting new ones up. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume, just like in most countries, most states and markets and cities in the United States, being a real estate agent is what everybody wants to do in Toronto too.
52,000 of us.
How many? 52,000. I think there's like 20,000 in Atlanta. Of course, it's being recorded, so I'm really embarrassed everybody if I'm wrong. But I think that's right. Anyway, so regardless, 52,000 is a lot. So
It's a lot.
52,000 real estate agents, and you are a top, well-recognized real estate agent in your market and in Sotheby's International Realty, or I wouldn't know you. And I have such admiration for you. So that being said, how have you differentiated yourself in what is such a competitive market and such a competitive industry among 52,000 real estate agents?
Well, I think for myself, the start of that journey has been starting with Sotheby's. And, when we started Sotheby's, I was a successful agent prior, but not to the same degree. Been in the business about 5 years, built that client base. But when I started Sotheby's, my business doubled every year for about 7 years. And that was a huge thing. But it got me larger opportunities. So I had to think of better ideas. Really thinking of how can I market this property for this client locally, but also internationally. And, the network behind Sotheby's has been a strong one for me. Finding opportunities to bring buyers. In fact, my largest sale in the Toronto market, around $22 million, was done by the Sotheby's network. So, it's been a big part of my business to leverage that network. But also, I think, as we talked about earlier, being an advisor for clients. So trying to be a strategist on how do we manage this client's real estate portfolio, and looking at it, it was funny. I went into a listing presentation last week, and it started off with a vacant lot that they had bought last year and decided maybe we're not going to build a house anymore, so we got to sell this. And I said, okay, great, but what's your goal? What's your objective of selling this lot?
Great
and
question.
I said, we want to buy another a finished house in Southeast Oakville. I'm like, okay, so how does that fit into your whole program? Well, we have 10 houses, but this is what we want to do with these two. I said, 10 houses. We got to think of how we're going to manage these 10 properties and make that work so that you can move into this larger house that you're looking at. And they said, you mean you can help us to create a strategy around these 10 properties, not just this one? I'm like, yeah, even if it's a 10-year plan, that's what we're here. We're here to be an advisor and here to create a plan for you over the next 10 years to manage this portfolio of hard-earned assets for you.
That's huge. And the way well, go ahead, finish what you were saying first.
Well, once I said that, they just said, I've never heard of real estate being looked at upon that way by a real estate agent.
Well, and the way you approached it, I think in our business, everybody's so used to just like asking for the referral and asking for the business. And it's like, guys, come on, like offer the value. Like you didn't ask if you could refer them agents in other countries. You asked them if they own things and explain to them how you can be an important piece of putting those transactions together, which I think is powerful. It wasn't what's in it for you. You positioned it in a way of what was in it for them.
Yeah, and it's interesting. To your point, I think when you look at working for business that's not here today but here tomorrow, and here the next year and next 5 years, clients respect that, and they've done it in their business. And it's interesting. I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but in my 14 years of business, I've never actually given a client gift. And at the end of
that's really bad. And you're still successful. That's crazy.
But I think at the end of the day, they still come back to me.
Because it's not about the gift. It's really not. Even though I'm big on those, but that's awesome.
Oh no, and I apologize. It's one of those things that my new partner Olivia is teaching me about doing more of that. And but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's when you add value and you really become an advisor, that value is so that information and advice that you're giving is so valuable that to them
it's
that's
not about the gift. That's is a gesture
gift that you could receive. Yeah,
the gift is a gesture, but that better not be what they're hiring you for, or you're in trouble.
Anyways, I don't know if that was a good example, but
no, it was. I think there's a lot of focus in our business on the tricks of the trade and the things you do to kind of manipulate the business your way, and that's part of what I've kind of to realize that some of my podcast has become about is that this profession is so much more valuable and deserves more respect than that from not only the community, but the people in our business to recognize the value that we offer. But what were you going to say about that?
Well, I think, and I've learned it from you, Jere, is, being a partner with your clients and your colleagues is more important than any marketing material you could do, any email blast that you could put out there. And people, when you're earnest and authentic, I think, being authentic is a huge part to my success. I am who I am. Mm-hmm. And clients see that. It's something that I've seen in a number of successful people. And so, that's a big part of my business. That's
huge. That's awesome. So what is a success in this business? And the $22 million sale is a pretty cool one. But what would you say is a success in this business that you're most proud of?
Well, I think a success is being able to take the product and whether it's a $2 million house, and think, who is the buyer for this product? And again, it brings back my experience in advertising and kind of looking at it and saying, okay, who's going to be buying this product or this house, and where are they coming from? Are they coming from the local Toronto market? Are they maybe coming internationally? Like this is, there's some product in Toronto that we just know is probably more going to be someone from outside of Toronto rather than someone living in Toronto. And so you want to adjust your marketing strategy to reflect what you discover.
Who the buyer is.
Who the buyer is.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to fit a square in a round hole, taking the time to really examine how to properly market. I use professionals. I think that's the other thing is I use professionals for every bit of the marketing. Whether I love English, but I can write, but I don't love it. So I get a professional copywriter. Photography. When I see some people with camera shots from their iPhone, I
can't believe people still do that.
I'm blown away.
I am too. That one's that blows my mind. The people still do. They still do that. I still don't. That is beyond me that people still do that. That's a whole nother podcast. But thank goodness, it's not that way, and we have all these resources. So, what would you say is what's a big lesson learned? We are presented with so many problems in this business, and we really are valuable because of our problem-solving skills. So we see, literally, think about every day we see more problems than most people do, and at least here. Or more. So what are some big lessons, or what's a big lesson? Put yourself in this situation that seemed dire and awful, and what was a lesson you learned in that problem that you can share with us?
Well, I think, you know what, I'll bring it back to my first year in real estate. I worked for one of the top agents in the Toronto market. She's still a very successful agent, but you had to be on your game. Mistakes were something that she really did not like. And I remember one time I was showing a property, and new and excited, took the client through, came out, client left, and then realized I'd left the keys in the house. The house fell.
Oh no.
Of course, not going to be there for a couple of months. I trembled as I was about to make the call to the agent I was working with, and I think it's before I made that call, I found a locksmith. Took about 5 locksmiths to find someone who's going to arrive within 45 minutes and get it open. Had to still make the call, let the agent know, what the agent that I was working for know what happened, but that I had found a solution. And, at the end of the day, it's take ownership of mistakes. I think
Can
clients.
You say that again? Because that is so huge. Own your mistakes. Yeah.
People make mistakes. When I speak with clients, I'm not perfect. but they know, there was a house that I'm working on right now. It's going to be about a $6.5–7 million listing, $7 million listing. We need to get, it just fixed up to look top notch. And this contractor, it was taking a while to get him to get in, and my client's schedule is busy. And so there was a specific time of 2 weeks that we had to get this done. And, we were trying hard. The contractor wasn't going to make it. And so I came to the client and said, listen, and then the budget changed a little bit. But I went to the client and said, listen, I will solve this problem. I'm determined, whether it's late nights, whether it's weekends, but we'll get this house ready in your time frame, and I'll find a solution. And that's all he really needed to hear. I think once he heard it, about 3 days later, he said, you know what, I'm giving you another 2 weeks, so you have a month. Well, that took all the pressure off me. But he just wanted to know that you're looking after it, that you're working to find a solution, no matter what it takes. You take what, and clients' expectations can be high, and I think that differentiates an agent that says, and often people will say, well, that's not your problem. I'm like, it always is my problem.
Exactly. Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Well, I think
in client's eyes, I have to find the solution.
There's some saying about, if when you squeeze a lemon, if lemon juice comes out, it's a lemon. If it doesn't, it's something else. Or when people get under pressure, it's not, our successes are created from failures and created from problems. When we are the people who are able to handle those problems appropriately, that's where we bring the success to the table. When things get ugly, that's where it's time. Now the show is on. And I love your thing. A big thing I have is do not bring me a problem without a solution. If I've heard you to do something, and I think about that for my clients, if we've got a problem, I'm not going to come with them and just give them a problem, because what they hired me for, to tell them their problem, they could have figured that out on their own, right? All right, what's our solution? We don't have any showings. All right, well, solution, what's the solution to no showings? What are we doing about it? Otherwise, I don't want to hear about no showings. But then I could go down a long path about pricing and marketing and all of that. So on that, I want to hear you talk a little bit about your listing presentation, or just kind of talk about, your lead generating, which you probably are not lead generating much anymore. They're probably just coming to you. And your winning business, which would be, especially your listing presentation. So I've given you a broad question. Yeah, you can answer how you want. Yeah.
Lead generation is constant, right? There's always.
It just becomes who we are after a while.
Yeah, I find, yes, a lot of my business, I don't do marketing out into the community to promote my brand. All my business is generated through past clients, my centers of influence. When we started Sotheby's, I realized very quickly that industries that dealt with ultra high net worth and high net worth individuals in Sotheby's were great synergies. And so working with wealth management, private banking has been a big source of my business. But working with them as true partners, and being there again. Even when there's not an opportunity to get a new client, is answering questions, finding information for those partners of mine, just like my partners within the Sotheby's network. I'm constantly working with wealth management partners, providing advice to their clients, again, without a transaction. And when you work for people without, because our time is, we work hard, and as you know, our very little bit of time for the work we do. So when they see you working for them without something there to make money, they appreciate that. And it was, this one gentleman I met at a private banker. We first met, and we both realized that our business, the way that we generate business, is by helping clients build their own businesses. So, I'm constantly finding ways that I can connect one client with another client that I just, you think, wow.
Well, that offers value, and it leads to so many. Well,
absolutely.
They see how connected you are, which is that's how we sell properties.
I was today, there's a developer who's building, it's going to be a truly amazing project right behind the Four Seasons in Toronto. He wants to be the top luxury building in the city. It's a Norman Foster building,
Exciting.
Only about 65 units. But what he's going to have is a 5-star Michelin restaurant in the property that will be able to be leveraged by the residents in-house catering, have a private chef available for the residents 24/7. And I'm talking with a client of mine today who owns about 40 restaurants and, a couple of really top restaurants in Toronto. And I said, hey, I just was with this developer last week. He's going to be putting a restaurant in this really cool condo building. Would that be of any interest to you, in terms of how? He's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'd love to.
I love it. That's how it happens. That's awesome.
And so here, he gets introduced to this building, potential business, maybe looks at a unit there. But at the same time, this developer is seeing that I'm just, I'm talking about the building with clients. It's not going to be launched for 3 months. So, he was very excited about that. So again, it's helping others build their own businesses.
But you just positioned yourself to generate tremendous loyalty and referrals from these guys, and if not, get some additional business directly from them in the long run. So that's huge. I want to know, we talked a little bit about this before the interview, so I would love to hear you share with everyone. How does your listing presentation typically go? Just give us a quick rundown of that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Sotheby's has an incredible, Sotheby's is really a marketing machine focused around real estate. And the tools that it has at its disposal are so vast. I often found myself when, I put these listing presentations together and I have the beautiful book. I always make sure it looks in
we do have lots of beautiful stuff, don't we?
Beautiful presentation, lots of great visuals. And I bring it with me. At the end of the day, it's still probably shut by the time I leave. And I just say, well, and here's this, all the materials that we spoke about. I like to get to know the client and more importantly, have them get to know me. It's really about listening to the client. And I would never, when we were in this listing presentation last week, if I didn't listen and in my head, I'm like, there's something more to this. So a lot of the, when I was in this listing presentation was listening to what the client was saying and realizing that there was something missing. We looked at this, we came in about this lot that he wanted to sell. We're doing a presentation in their house, but there was other things. And I knew that there had to be something that they weren't telling me that needed to be said. And that's where I just said, we're here to provide a total solution for your real estate portfolio, not this property, but all your real estate portfolio. Yeah. So a big part of the listing presentation for me is letting them get to know me, talking to them about what this property means to them and real estate in general.
So, yeah, because I want to make sure you come back home with that, because I think a lot of us go in to give a presentation. It's all about us. And there's so many emotions tied into the selling of real estate. And there's often things that we need to shut up and learn about them, not them about us. They should already know about us before we get there. We've made a mistake. So when you get there to learn about them, how do you get those things, as my favorite Chris Voss would call the black swans, the unknowns, out? How do you ask the questions and get them comfortable and figure out what those things are you need to know, for example, in this situation?
Well, I think, when you get there, if it's someone that, don't know, it's not a warm introduction, you get them, I find that I take them on, or have them take me on a tour of the property. It's allowed for casual conversation and, that could be a spectacular part. You get to see where their pride is. Someone walks you through their property, they'll tell you what parts of the house are special to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, you can understand, is it an artistic part? Is it a functional? Are they an engineer? And, this was built with these 3 I-beams that, came across, and, where they find an emotional attraction to the house.
Yeah.
And you also get to know them. Are they talkative? Are they very, quiet, but, give you just the information. So I find that walking around the house is very important. And then, talking with them, understanding who they are, and what is the motivation for selling the property, and what was their, are they excited about selling the property, or are they a little hesitant?
Exactly.
I think it's reading. Something I'm very good at is reading people, and being able to tell how to interact with them. So, I'm always myself in terms of I'm a positive and full of energy person, but when it's time to be quiet and listen, I can do that as well.
Which is huge. Yeah. I think the best conversations are when they get to talk most. And I love to talk, so I've really learned that.
And I think you're right in terms of,
yeah.
I find that a lot of agents will talk about themselves. I don't know. I don't talk a lot about myself unless I see a need in terms of giving an example of
Sometimes they want to know, and if they want to know, you need. But I think it's important to position yourself in the market so that by the time you get there, they've done their research and they know, and they're just excited for you to be there, and you can turn the tables and really make it about them, which really makes them feel comfortable, but it also gives you what you need to truly do a good job for the client. So moving on to, I want to get, we're going to start closing out here because we're getting to the end of our time, and I know you're a busy man and you've probably got another $10 or $20 million listing to go to, but tell us, what is your favorite tool in real estate to maximize your success? Usually I'm thinking technology, but it could be anything other than your cell phone, because that's really it.
Can I be perfectly frank with you?
Please.
It's now you got me thinking. So
now you're like, never mind. What is it?
Right off the bat, I was going to say it's getting together with. I enjoy people, and
the one-on-one
time with clients or centers of influence that I work with all the time.
That's probably the most correct answer. If there was a correct one to that question, not that there is, but that's like the best answer ever.
The time I spent, I remember a broker of mine once said to me that, you just need 10 conversations a day about real estate. And I was like, I hate cold calling, but I realized I don't have to cold call people.
Framed that way. What a great way to frame it. You just need 10 conversations a day about real estate. Well, geez, that's what we're in this for.
But when he said that, I thought, I'm going to have to pick up the phone. And I remember my first job out of university was cold calling for a moving company.
Oh, so you already had like post-traumatic stress disorder from that.
Oh, yeah, I was going back to that. But you know what? I pick up the phone and I just talk with people. They'll be the ones to ask about real estate. I don't have to bring it up.
You are right about that.
And so those are your 10 conversations.
Love it. So what is the one book you would recommend that we read? What's your favorite? Or what have you gotten the most out of?
Okay. So you have to read a book by a very good friend of mine, Mr. Steve Sims.
All right.
Steve is it's called The Art of Making Things Happen.
I like the name of it.
And Steve is a guy who will put you on the down at the Titanic. He'll get you into the Oscars last night. He was there at Elton John's party. For a client, he got my client to have dinner at the feet of David with Andre Bocelli singing. And I think that's the art of making it happen.
Isaac's in my ear. He's like, wow. Anyway, go ahead.
And that was set up in 24 hours, believe it or not. But the thing that Steve once told me,
I can't wait to read
how do you do these crazy things? And he essentially said, Andy, I don't take no for an answer. And, he called up Mr. Bocelli's office and said, I have a client who would like to have dinner at the feet of David tomorrow at 9 o'clock and have Mr. Bocelli sing for them. And he got a little, ha ha ha, and then we'll call you. And
That's
so,
awesome.
he had to make that call. He said, I had to make that call. I called the Vatican when we were working and doing some stuff and said, have you ever dealt with Mr. Bocelli before? And they said, oh, yes, all the time. He goes, could you just call and let him know that I'm for real? And about half an hour later, it was, hello, was that 9 or 9:30 that you'd like Mr. Bocelli to come and perform? So, it's not taking no for an answer and not giving up. It's finding finding the solution.
It's huge. Love it. Yeah.
And that's what this book is about. So
I
it's
can't
definitely a high
wait
read
to
for
read
me.
this, Steve Sims. Okay, awesome. So the last question, always the best or my favorite, but with the one thing you want to be sure everybody listening to this, if there's one thing we get out of this, what do you want to make sure it is?
I would say the one thing is be yourself and connect with people. Like at the end of the day, that's what's going to generate new business for you. That's what's going to help you make deals happen. I find that too many people think that they have to fight for their client, and people who have to fight for their client are not giving good advice because, or they feel that that's the value they add. But if you give good advice and you're real, you can be yourself. You can stay cool, calm, and collected during that process of a negotiation. So being yourself and connecting with people and clients that's the biggest thing I would say.
Awesome. I love that. I agree with you 1,000%. Andy, that was a great interview. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jere. I really appreciate it.